For our continuing series on the future of content, Red Touch Media had a chance to sit down with one of the country's leading consultants, Peter Weedfald, the president of Gen 1 Ventures.
You know, the first time I heard about wearable tech was 7 or 8 years ago. And Beth Comstock had brought a bunch of people together at GE and had the executives in, and everyone in the room was talking about, what is that? You open up your coat and there's going to be a monitor in there. I mean, everybody's going to have pouches and there's going to be stuff stuck in them and you're going to walk around like Batman with a utility belt. What is that? You know, we've talked a little bit about the tech for babies. You know, there's a whole fitness tech thing. That's sort of wearable. If you put a wristband on, it tells you what your heart rate is. That's wearable tech. Yeah. But what is wearable tech? How important is it? Where is it going? And why does an individual care about it?
So first of all, Beth Comstock has done a great job, and I'm actually honored to have a chance to work with her now. She's actually helping to transform the speed of our company for us to think about technology and digital technology and all the provisions. I believe, of course, she was ahead of the time as a very smart harbinger, but the reality is that the timing now is perfect. Because 7 years ago, 8 years ago, we didn't have this sort of social networking, social preference. You know, consumers have actually changed quite a bit. They now are feeling very good about themselves. They're looking at themselves as publishers and content, right? And they're looking at the world differently. So when I think of wearables today, I think wearables are going to do extremely well because consumers today are very different than they were before. They love content, they love to publish content, they love the dignity of knowledge, and they love to be keeping up to date on everything. And if you think about wearables, the first thing you want to keep up to date with, to your examples, is self. Self is really important. I want to know what my heart rate is. I want to be able to communicate with my babies. We use the example about communicating with a baby. I want to know whether my mother, who is elderly, is being taken care of. It's easier if they're wearables than it is a device that you have to walk over to, you got to pick it up, you got to email somebody. That will look very old very, very soon when wearables come about. And I'll give you another example of a wearable that I'm really fired up about, which is contact lenses. So when the contact lens actually becomes a true node, and you can actually disseminate and propagate information back and forth through there, and that contact lens is connected to, you know, a button on your shirt, and the button on the shirt says that I have a relationship one-to-one with Levi Strauss, and I love Levi Strauss. In fact, everyone that I know in my social networking, we love Levi Strauss and we love Toomey. Then when Levi says, would you like us to tell you when something new comes out? You're walking down the street and information is sent to your eyeball based on the fact that you have a wearable here, and now you have information, and now you can have a relationship and say, I want to buy it.
So that's like a sort of a next-gen RFID situation and a heads-up display inside your...
Well, but you have to view it that way, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the immaturity and maturity, you know, if you go all the way back to the days of when there were mainframes and minis and there were no desktop PCs.
Right.
And so, yeah, we got to develop desktop PCs, but the reality
as a matter of fact, back then it was an acoustic coupler with a dumb terminal that hooked up to a mainframe. That was your desktop PC.
But to your point about batteries, if somebody wasn't thinking that we need to build that display and now make it flat, and now how can we move it mobilely? Well, we need a battery to be able to do that, and how can we connect it all together? So I'm just saying that what's happened to consumers, it's almost like a perfect storm. We've been training consumers to want the content. We've been training consumers to use all these mobile devices to buy right now, to give your credit card, to get information, to connect with your friends, to send pictures, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, all of that. And so what's the next step after that? Where are we going now? And I believe that wearables is the next great horizon, vertically and horizontally, for tech.
It also seems like it's the perfect interface to social media application.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, and you know, if you look at your chops in your lifetime and you look at my chops, they're so complementary, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like I'm rambling on and I've never run a $3.5 billion business for Samsung Electronics in North America. I have, and I've lived through 18 24-hour days on weekends worrying about everything we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So it's wonderful to just sit here right now and have this conversation, as opposed to somebody pointing at me going, come on, we got to go sell more product.
What are we supposed to do about this? Yeah. That's another thing. So Super Bowl 2 years ago, lights go out, Oreo creates this wonderful moment in time that was clearly created some other time. It couldn't have possibly been created at that very moment,
Right.
although it might have been. There's conflicting stories about that. With the you can dunk even in the dark, it goes out and boom, immediately becomes a smash. Within 24 hours, every marketer in America was talking about real-time marketing. And I was going like, well, geez, isn't that what we've done all of our lives as marketers? Isn't that exactly what we've done, except maybe we've thought about it a little longer? Especially journalists who have a way of looking at something. And so the point I'm getting at is real-time marketing just an application of journalism? Is it a tool that will actually work? Or is it something that can be easily, I know this, it can be easily misunderstood and mishandled and create some really bad situations?
That's a really powerful question, and I'm not limp-wristed, and I'm not of the faint of heart. But to really answer that question, it starts with adversity versus non-adversity. Meaning, the reason Oreo did that well with it is because their product, their content, is so well received and so mature, and it's been around for a really long time.
And by the way, it's also not controversial.
It's not controversial, but you know the goal is always to defer the cost of time-based competition without the benefit of product differentiation. The goal is to defer the cost of time-based competition. So Oreo has been advertising and marketing the product for 20, 30, 50, 70 years. I'm coming out with a new cookie. I'm going to try to compete with Oreo, right? How in God's name am I going to defer all the people who love Oreos, all the advertising that's done for 30 years, billions of dollars, all the relationships, all the retail stores, all of that without the benefit of product differentiation? So holistically, from an adverse standpoint, this thing called real-time marketing for them was just simply people saying, I love Oreo, that was cool, hey guys, did you see that about Oreo?
And by the way, it was extension of brand through reach and frequency.
That's right. That's back to our point on reach and frequency.
Yeah.
Size, color, location, reach, and frequency.
Yeah.
So it depends on who you are and where you are. So for example, I'm so tired about hearing about, with all due respect to the world, how great the Coke brand is. Excuse me, McFly, there's 7 billion, 20 billion Coke cans across the world.
I was just thinking exactly the same thing, and I was going to say, you know what, even Coke can screw it up. They did it with
Coke Zero.
Coke Zero, but they also did it with New Coke.
And by the way, that's content.
Yeah.
That's double down content. So the reality of the messaging, to your point about what Oreo did, which was messaging, to me, it has to be ambient. The conversation has to be ambient, meaning it has to be about
organic.
Organic and ambient. Yeah. Ambient meaning it's 360 degrees. That I can't talk about messaging if I can't self-evaluate the content first. The content for me is the cookie. And if people in the masses love the cookie, and you can come up with an idea to do something that's different than the standard bill of fare of advertising, then all of a sudden people call it real-time marketing.
And they'll open up their eyes and go, oh, that's different. And actually, in fact, it's not so different.
But there are people who've done marketing and spent $3 million on a Super Bowl in 15 seconds, 30 seconds.
And then you go away and don't remember what the product is.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
And I ask people all the time about this real-time marketing. I say, did you watch TV last night? Yes. What'd you watch? Remember, give me a name of one TV commercial. Back to reach and frequency that works.
Yeah.
Inevitably, the only thing anyone can remember is Geico and Progressive.
Yeah.
And the reason is because...
Well, now Aflac.
And Aflac, a little bit of Aflac, yeah. But because it was about consistency,
Yeah.
frequency, size, color, and location.
Yeah.
They pounded it, they pounded it, they pounded it, they pounded it, you remember.
Yeah.
So Oreo did the same thing, except Oreo did it over 50 years.
Yeah.
So, look, I believe in real-time marketing, if you want to call it that, but it goes back to me, which is called time to volume.
You know, it's funny. There were a lot of studies about the last Super Bowl that people remembered the most, the promos for the network that the Super Bowl ran on, because they kept running the same promo over and over again,
right,
knowing that at any given 15-minute period of time, the audience had shifted a little bit.
Yep.
So it's like morning television. Nobody watches morning television more than about 7 minutes at a time. If you run the same promo every 7 minutes, a different group of people will see that promo, reach and frequency.
So think, you asked such a powerful question. I got to go back to it one more time. So the commonality about the Super Bowl a billion people watching the Super Bowl is football. And there's this group of people who sometimes are huge football fans and sometimes have been sitting on the peripheral. But everyone's there for football, right? And there's an expectation about the content of that game. But what's crazy, which isn't disciplined in a lot of the other real-time marketing, everyone expects one-of-a-kind, fresh, never seen before advertising. Like, you literally are dialing in because Budweiser is going to run a commercial that they never ran before.
And it'll make you cry.
Right, and it'll make you cry. Or you're going to see, GoDaddy's going to do something really wacky. That, to me, is the content provisions that need to be articulated and more disciplined across products, technology, and advertising that I think there's a huge void and a huge opportunity around.
Under promise and over deliver.
So I'm going to give you an example of that, okay? I've created TV commercials. I did it for Samsung. I did it for Circuit City. I know what they cost. When I joined Circuit City, which of course went Chapter 11, I left 2 years before they went Chapter 11 because there was big problems there. But when I got there, they were paying $4.5 million to create a TV commercial. And I went, $4.5 million? I need that money for the media.
Yeah, and they weren't great TV.
And they weren't great TV commercials. So what I did was I cored it back down, and I spent about $250,000, which I still thought was a ton of money. But what I would do is I would come out with 10 flavors on a particular subject with that $250, while we were spending $4.5 million for one.
Right.
And what that did was it gave us the propensity to talk about, sort of like Progressive. Progressive does that now, right? Flow.
Well, in the end, it's about flow.
It's about flow, right?
As the one character that is their frequency.
That's right, and I'll give them credit on that. But the other point is that their commercials keep changing all the time.
Yeah,
and so does Geico's.
Right,
because they have the budget to do it, and that keeps us as interested. That's real-time marketing.
It's funny though that Geico not only it has the gecko, but it also has a whole other series of commercials that don't have the gecko in them.
Right,
and they're still very successful with their messaging.
Right. So if you think about frequency and reach and content, the philosophy there is that we're going to hit you with frequency and reach, but we're going to keep it interesting like the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
All brand new, all the time. We're telling stories. But there's still a multitude of advertisers who build one commercial for $4.5 million and run the heck out of it. And the second time you see it, you go, click, I've seen that one.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell me it again. So you're not building a relationship and story for the brand, for the product, for the content. And in point of fact, somewhere along the way, you might be adversing yourself for consumers saying, I don't want to see that commercial again.
Then there's the whole issue about how you utilize the internet for commercial application. I don't mean commercial application, I mean for the application of using television commercials on the internet. Do you put television shows on the internet? Well, we already know that doesn't work.
Right.
Unless you're doing it on Hulu or Amazon or some streaming service. You don't put a television commercial in a banner ad. People don't click on a television commercial unless it's really great content.
Right. And we're going to go back to personalization. I see a lot of 15-second, 10-second commercials now on the free format of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's a pre-roll.
Yeah, but the sad part is that most of the time, I would say 6 out of 10 times, it's not relevant to the content that I'm about to look at.
Right, which is really weird because everyone will tell you that they're going to serve you a content that is relevant to what it is you're interested in.
Right. So if I was interested in reading an article about what just happened with Intel at the CES show, I would have no problem just seeing a 15-second clip that talked about Edison and what the art of the possible is. In fact, I learned from Bill Ziff years ago that consumers that are really, really, really hungry and hunt for data on a particular subject, they'll read the ads and they'll engage with the communications and the content of the ads even greater than the editorial. And that's true, and it's never changed. That's why PC Magazine and others were so successful, because the advertisements were as exciting as the editorial, because the advertisements talked about new products, new technology, speeds and feeds, and in the editorial, of course, separation would talk about, juxtaposed lab-based unbiased product evaluations to tell you the truth of whether or not that claim was real.
An editorial in the true editorial sense, which was an opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Peter, this has been just fantastic.
What an honor to be with you, Frank.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. We should definitely do a panel sometime. Frank Radice, thanks so much for watching this episode of The Future of Content, powered by Red Touch Media.
If you want to see more, just click on one of these buttons.